Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dr. Ferrer, your professor in research in social studies. So this will be our last video for the course, how to write your chapter 4 and how to write your chapter 5. The fourth chapter of your paper is titled Presentation, Analysis, and Interpretation of Data. First, we're going to define analysis. This is the process of breaking up the whole study into the constituent parts of categories according to the specific questions under the statement of the problem. Analysis will bring out into focus the essential features of your study. Now, how to prepare for the presentation of your data? First, you have to construct a tabular. That is, you have to determine the classes in the respective subclasses of your variables. Then make rows for the classes by drawing horizontal lines, and make columns for subclasses by drawing vertical lines with appropriate spaces between the lines. Your presentation of data is the process of organizing your data into logical, sequential, and meaningful categories and classification. So that is to make your data amenable to study and interpretation. Analysis also and presentation of your result put your data into forms that are intelligible and interpretable, so that the relationship between the research specific questions and their intended answers can be established. So in presenting your result, you have to check on what did you find in your study. In doing so, there's no need for you to cite literature in this part of your study, but you will just have to describe the results found in your investigation. Now let's have the textual presentation of your data. This uses statements with numerals or numbers to describe your data. The disadvantage of this, if it is too long, it is boring to read. So your reader may escape some statements in your presentation. Now, how about the tabular presentation of data? These are a statistical table, which is a systematic arrangement of related data in which classes of numerical facts or data are given each row and their subclasses are given each column in order to present the relationship of the sets or numerical facts or data in a definite, compact, and understandable form or forms. So if there's a need for you to present your data in a tabular form, you have to consult this discussion for your research. Now let's have the analysis and interpretation. This part of your research will present the principles, relationship, and generalization shown by the results. The result need to be compared and interpreted with those in previously published works. So, in this part of your research, you can now cite literature or studies which have some bearing to the result of your study. The implications of your results as well as the possible application must be discussed in this part of your paper. Now, the presentation of data in tabular and textual forms must always follow the arrangement of the specific problems in your chapter 1. You have to make sure that you have described the conditions which are obtained for each set of results. Make sure also that you use appropriate statistical analysis as called for in your data. Your results need discussion. What do they mean? Or how do they fit in the existing body of knowledge? So be reminded of those questions as you analyze and interpret your data. Example, in doing the discussion, you have to try to see what do the results of your study mean. Or as you are allowed to make citations, you can do it so by citing according to or similar with, or make sure that your discussion are with scientific backing of the results. Now, in organizing your discussion, you have to see to it that your discussion has a short introduction. See to it that it has some relation to previous findings, or how your findings are similar to those previous findings, or how your findings are different to those. And at the end, you have to make your own conclusion, such as the strengths, the limitations, or the future use or recommendations for that particular results of your study. So that would be for writing your chapter 4. Now let's proceed with how to write your chapter 5. The 5th chapter of your research is titled The Summary, the Conclusions, and Recommendations. So there are a few guidelines covering the presentation of the summary of findings. First, there should be a brief statement about the main purpose of your study, your population and respondents, the period of your study, the method of research used, the research instrument, and the sampling design. Remember that there should be no explanation made in this part of your research. Now, the findings may be lumped up all together, but clarity demands that each specific question under the statement of the problem must be written first to be followed by the findings that would answer it. It should follow the order in your statement of the problem. Next is the findings should be textual generalization, meaning a summary of all the important data consisting of the text and numbers. Next is only the important finding. The highlights of your data should be included in the summary, especially those upon which the conclusion should be made. Next is findings are not explained nor elaborated anymore, meaning they should be stated as concisely as possible. And another is no new data should be introduced in the summary of findings. Now, how about in formulating your conclusions? Conclusions are inferences, deductions, abstractions, implications, interpretations, general statements, and or generalizations based upon the findings of your study. No conclusions should be made that are not based upon your findings. You have to remember that. Conclusions should appropriately answer the specific questions raised at the beginning of the investigation, in the order they are given under the statement of the problem. So similar to the presentation of your findings, your conclusion should also be in the order as to how your statement of the problem was being presented earlier. So the study becomes meaningless if the question raised are not properly answered by your conclusion. Conclusion should point out what were factually learned from your inquiry. However, no conclusion should be drawn from the implied or an indirect effect of the findings. So if you have seen that it is but an implication or an indirect effect of your findings, you should not draw your conclusion from that. Next, conclusion should be formulated concisely, or meaning it should be brief and short, yet they convey all the necessary information resulting from the study as required by the specific questions. It is because without any strong evidence to the contrary, conclusions should be stated categorically. And conclusion should refer only to the population, to the area, or the subject of the study. And it should not be repetitions of any statement anywhere in your thesis. So, as you formulate your conclusion, be guided by the questions such as, so what? Or now what? Or how does your work advance the field? Will it give you a new knowledge, or will it recommend to you some use, or can it be a basis for some extension projects or programs that will benefit a clientele or the respondents themselves? Now, how about your recommendations? So, recommendations should aim to solve or help solve problems discovered in the investigation. No recommendations should be made for a problem or anything for that matter that has not been discovered or discussed in the study. And there may also be recommendations for the continuance of a good system, or even a recommendation for its improvements. So if you find that there's a need for you to recommend to continue a good practice or a good system, then be it. But if you found out that there's a need to recommend for an improvement of a practice or a system, then recommend it for improvement. Another is recommendation should aim for the ideal, but if you aim for that they must be feasible, practical, and attainable. Recommendations should be logical and valid, and it should be addressed to the persons, entities, agencies, or offices who or which are in a position to implement your recommendations. And do not forget that there should be a recommendation for further research on the same topic in other places to verify, to amplify, or to negate the findings of your study. So before I end, I would like you to be reminded by this saying: if you think writing is easy, you are doing it wrong. Okay, so that would be all, class, for your course. Always refer to your work text for other reminders in preparing your paper. See you during the final defense of your research. Thank you and good day.